is a donation to the hospital to help the neediest and our most vulnerable little patients get through some of these tough things that they're facing when they're in Helen DeVos Children's Hospital.
Could not think of a better way to spend money and have a great time. Obviously, all for the benefit of the Helen DeVos Children's Hospital Foundation. By the way, all of the Clear Channel stations that are airing this program, Clearly Community, will have links to buy those tickets as well. He is Brad Kaufman with the Helen DeVos Children's Hospital Foundation, and you've been listening to Clearly Community here on this Clear Channel station.
Clearly Community is a public affairs program of Clear Channel Media and Entertainment.
Clearly Community is brought to you by Huntington Bank. Welcome to asterisk-free checking. No gotcha fees, no asterisks. Only from Huntington.
Listen again next week at this time for another segment of Clearly Community right here on your favorite Clear Channel Media and Entertainment radio station.
In the streets below, traffic had stopped. Pedestrians were lying on sidewalks and curled up in doorways. There was no sign of violence, no wrecks, nothing like that. It was as if the people in New York had simply decided to stop whatever they were doing and pass out. Ice coated my stomach. The invasion has started. To find out what happens next, read Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library. And visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
I knew I had a problem.
I tried counting calories, eating and eating.
Nobody else could possibly understand.
We understand. We're Overeaters Anonymous, and we have helped thousands of people stop their compulsive eating and start living a healthy, rewarding life.
With OA, I am living again and loving it.
Start living the life you deserve with help from Overeaters Anonymous. Find us on the web at oa.org.
I see this ad on TV. I call, they told me to stop paying my bills, stop talking to my creditors. They'd take care of everything.
I gave them thousands, but most of it went to their fees.
Getting out of debt isn't easy. Talk to your creditors directly or visit debtadvice.org. Real solutions for real people. This has been a public service message.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Salma Hayek, and I believe that number should be zero. Believe in zero.
Join the effort. Visit unicefusa.org.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Frosty's got his pocket and his hands in every pocket of my clothes. Good morning. This is Jim Riley, and I am your host at EyeOnMuskegon. This community conversation, Sunday mornings. And I'm here in Muskegon's Cold Channel studios with my friend and the frozen engineer, Oscar Osvo. Oscar, you know, you had, this has probably got to be good for the heart, right?
Yeah,
50
right.
Some degrees. Folks, it is cold in our studio here. For some reason, the non-producing portion of our vast enterprise in the Clear Channel studios is nice and toasty, but in our little corner we're cold. So if we shiver and our teeth chatter,
it's pretty
there's nobody else going on here.
That Jim won't pay for the heat. That's what it is. Yeah, you didn't pay enough.
Pretty much. That's exactly. The rich Republicans have reneged again, causing coldness and reverse global warming to descend.
You forgot to pay the heat bill in our apartment over here, so you know.
Exactly. Hey, and helping Oscar taunt and torment me for this hour and a half, we've got Gentleman Farmer, and retired captain, Navy captain, Fred Birch. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, and quite honestly, it's not too difficult to taunt you.
That's true. That's true. Well, we make it easy
Oscar
here.
Probably doesn't need much help.
We do make it easy here at Eye on Muskegon to taunt the host, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, if you really want to get into the taunting on your own, you can give us a call. We are a call-in talk radio show. The number here is 231-830-3109, and you can call in anytime. Now, when we have a guest, you can call in, but you won't get through. And we do have a phone-in guest, or not any guest, but it has to be a phone-in guest. And at the 9 o'clock hour, we will have, from the Mackinac Center, who've been really wonderful in providing us with experts on all number of things, Jack McHugh will be talking about something that we've really got to be looking at closely going forward here, and that is what they call the education bubble. And we'll be talking about that, and after that conversation, we'll probably have an expanded conversation about Muskegon Community College's request for $31 million to build new properties.
Is that all?
Well, that's all at this point.
No, not $1 billion?
Well, yeah, yeah, really. It's so little. Why even bother asking?
Really. That's pocket change.
Well, anyway, we'll kind of tie those two things together. But until Jack gets on at 9 o'clock, we will shiver our way through the first half hour, and there are a bunch of things going on here in town. And if I could just give a recap, we talked last week about the fact that the Muskegon County Republicans are kind of regenerating, and they had an open meeting on Monday night. And Fred, you were there. I did video it, and we did put it on YouTube, and it's up on I believe the Muskegon County Republican website.
It was actually quite a good meeting.
Well, it was a good and an interesting meeting on many ways, and I don't want to get into all the details. But one thing I noticed, and I frankly I was very disappointed. The good news was that we had folks not just who were Republicans and conservatives and who were interested in the prevailing wage concept and the fact that it might very well cost Muskegon County taxpayers and businesses and residents, upwards of $2 to, who knows, maybe as much as $10 million or more dollars. And this is a decision that's going to be made soon. But also attending, which I thought I think kind of credit until they started interrupting, was the county the Board of Commissioners county chairman, Ken Mahoney, was there.
You have to give Ken props. I mean, he walked into the lion's den, and yes, he did interrupt. He did interrupt you, as a matter of fact, when you talked. But he was there, and he was listening to what people had to say.
Well, he was there, and other folks from the unions who also were interrupting and making noise. And frankly, what I saw from this, and we can talk about what some of them said, but what I saw from this is how the left wins arguments. They interrupt, they make noise, they do not let the presenter complete their sentence, they do not let the presenter complete their thought. And again, I know they do this among themselves.
Sounds like a talk show host I know.
Well, that's different, Talk show hosts are allowed to do that. We've got the Ed Schultz, and we've got any number of folks on the left and certainly folks on the right that have their own shows. But it's a little different when you've got the chairman of the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners, and he was interrupting. But what was interesting about what Ken Mahoney, the chairman of the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners, a very vocal, as we found out, supporter of sticking it to the Muskegon taxpayers by forcing this prevailing wage rule on the county and requiring that the only people who will be able to bid on this, who knows, $20 to $60 million new jail that they're talking about will be those inside cronies, those insiders who essentially bought access. Union construction companies. So in other words, this is really no different than corporate welfare for union construction companies. But let me just finish this point. What Ken Mahoney said, and he as others were speaking too, he said the jail is only going to cost $20 million.
And he said $23 million.
Okay, 23, maybe 20 to 25 million. Now, I'll take him at his word that that's what he believes. But what I find interesting, and he was quite vociferous about this, the last public meeting that was made where the jail finances were discussed. So in other words, the last time that the county commissioners were legally allowed to meet and discuss this public issue, because of the Open Meetings Act, the amount that was discussed was $35+ million. So what I find interesting is that for some reason, we're now talking $20 million, and in fact, one would wonder how they got from the 35, the public announcement, to the 20. Certainly, the Chronicle has not done any reporting on this. And,
well, I thought what was particularly interesting, other than the the back and forth between you and Ken, was the comment that Ken made that Bonnie Hammersley had actually looked at the numbers between using prevailing wage and not using prevailing wage, and there was no difference in the price. And to which I would say, well, if there's no difference, then why would you then require a prevailing wage issue? Because if there's no difference, then there's no difference, and it makes no sense to have that. So
I would agree.
There's a strange amount of stuff going on, and the other thing was there was a lot of talk about trying to protect the workers, a lot of talk about trying to protect the unions, a lot of talk about making sure that we got good construction work, and the fact that there were specialized people, but there was very little discussion from the left on the fact that the taxpayers are funding this project, and the fact that we have taxpayers in Muskegon County who are still living week to week, holding their garage sales, taking their goods to auctions, doing all of these things in order to try to survive, and would love to have some of these jobs, and yet they're still expected to pay their taxes, and we're going to jack up people's taxes in order to pay through those taxes into these union funds and into union jobs. At some point, somebody has to start to consider the taxpayer's position in all of this stuff. And while I can understand some of the arguments from the left, at some point you have to acknowledge that we are out of money.
Well, let me agree with you 100% on that, and the reason we're talking about this now, and the reason that you had this turnout of Democrats at a Republican meeting, was that there are special interests who have sweetheart deals, and they don't want to give them up. Now, they tell us they have all sorts of proof that prevailing wage laws, or in this case it's a rule, it's a self-imposed rule that could be voted out at any moment if Muskegon County Commissioners, and that's the 2 Republicans and the 7 Democrats on that board, they could vote it out. But the argument from the left is it doesn't cost any more. We have Bonnie Hammersley saying, matter of fact, denying the conversation that I have since confirmed with Jack Spencer of the Mackinac Center. I spoke with him last week when I heard that County Board Chairman Ken Mahoney had said Bonnie Hammersley had never said this. Well, she did say that she knows that it costs more. She knows that it involves significantly more paperwork, et cetera, and so on. Now they're denying that conversation. I'm going to stand by Jack Spencer and the Mackinac Center. They have not misled me. Sadly, Mrs. Hammersley has most definitely misled me, and not only me, but I believe the Muskegon County Board of Commission. But let's get to the real key here. The left... The unionist, this is not a left-right issue, actually. This is a unionist, this is an insider, special connection group of folks who wants to defer money into their own pockets. They assure us that the prevailing wage law does not result in increased costs. If that's the case, then let's get rid of it. Let's everybody bid, because right now the only companies that can bid are companies that have union labor, have that union, that inside straight.
It's crony capitalism at its worst.
Absolute worst. And the reason, again, we're bringing it up is that on Tuesday there will be the Muskegon Board of Commissioners are meeting to redefine this law or this rule that they have self-imposed on us. I read it, and I'm you've read it too, I believe, yep. Fred. I'm pretty good at legalese. I've read the old law. It's indecipherable.
Yeah, it's pretty much meant to obfuscate any attempt at understanding what the hell it says.
Yeah, and you know that. And you laugh, Oscar, but that when they do that, you know where they're going. Right. You know they don't want us to know, because if they made it clear maybe we wouldn't like it. But we're going to make it clear that we'll be right back after this break.
Love me sometime.
It's official. Cash for Clunkers is back. Only at Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC. Hurry, for a limited time only. Benton is paying you up to $3,500 or more for your clunker. Every vehicle in our massive new car inventory is on sale. Everything has been drastically reduced for this official Cash for Clunkers sales event. Hurry, for a limited time only. Shop the largest selection of new Chevrolets and GMCs. Get the lowest prices you'll find in Michigan, guaranteed. Get up to $9,000 in additional savings on Chevy Silverado. Hurry, for a limited time only. 0% for 72 months. And up to $3,500 for your clunker. So stop what you're doing and get to Benton's 20-acre motor mall for this official Cash for Clunker sales event. Drag it, pull it. We'll take anything on trade, and you'll get up to $3,500 or more for it. Hurry, for a limited time only. Nobody sells more new vehicles than we do. Get here today and get up to $3,500 for your clunker. It's where Michigan shops. Only at Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC, Henry Street, Muskegon. Your official Cash for Clunkers headquarters. Hurry, for a limited time only.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station at downtown Spring Lake.
A message from Orlando Bloom, Liam Neeson, Lawrence Fishburne, Salma Hayek, and Taya Leone.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes.
Like not getting enough food or medicine.
Or clean, safe water to drink.
But we are gaining ground. A generation ago, twice as many children were dying.
Still, 24,000 every day?
I believe.
I believe.
I believe that number should be zero.
Believe in zero.
Join the effort. Visit UNICEFUSA.org.
I took a bullet to the side and left me paralyzed.
For injured veterans like Felipe Adams, there are veterans like Armando de la Rosa ready to help. Paralyzed Veterans of America, changing lives, building futures. Visit PVA.org.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every...
And we're back at EyeOnMuskegon. This is Jim Riley, your fuzzy little easy-to-love host. And Captain Fred. Captain Jack. Well, Captain Jack is a...
Captain Jack is something you've been drinking lately. That's what we're drinking to warm up in here.
Pretty much.
Captain Morgan was here.
Captain Morgan. There you
folks,
go.
It's cold here in these intergalactic studios of EyeOnMuskegon today.
We had too much coffee. That's the problem.
And we got Oscar. Well, the three of us maybe ought to huddle together and warm up.
No thanks, but no thanks.
There we go. Yeah. So we'll just sit here and freeze. But we are back. We're talking. We were talking about the prevailing wage scam, and it truly is a scam. What's interesting to me, and I want to move on to something else in a sec, but you can look online and see what this proposal that's going to be voted on Tuesday is. Call your county commissioner and ask them to explain to you what this is about and how this is different from the old one. I assure you, they will not have a clue. And that ultimately is the real problem that's going on in our county commission. We're not just broke, and we're not just super broke, but every time these folks sit together, maybe not every time, but certainly time and time again, they will make significantly important votes, and they will not have a clue about what they're doing.
What you're telling me is we're not only broke, but we're clueless.
Pretty much. And that's sad. And there's a way to fix that. There is a way to fix that by giving your county commissioners calls. You can go to EyeOnMuskegon.com. I've got that list of all the county commissioners' home phone numbers. You can give them a call and say, look, if you're going to vote on this thing, I'd like you to tell me what it is. And if you can't explain it to me, could you call me back? And at least then they'll do their homework in advance. Because right now, this is just another broke and clueless that we're going down the pike here. And we don't want to go down the pike. Hey, I'd like to read a quote it seems to me kind of, at least the media might consider this a mean-spirited quote, and I'll read it to you. The fact that we are here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. It is a sign that the United States government cannot pay its own bills. It is a sign that we now depend on ongoing financial assistance from foreign countries to finance our government's reckless fiscal policies. Increasing America's debt weakens us domestically and internationally. Leadership means that the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today on the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better. And, of course, we're talking about raising the debt limit. You would think that this might be coming from some of those nasty Tea Party folks, or maybe that very vociferous and powerful Speaker of the House, Boehner. But no, this quote can be attributed to 2006 Senator Barack H. Obama. Isn't it interesting how your point of view changes when you're the spender-in-chief?
Well, it depends on whose ox is being gored.
Pretty much. Hey, I want to talk about...
I don't know, Mitt's view never changed too much during his campaign either, but, you know.
What view was it? That's the problem. I think that folks had a problem with Mitt, But Mitt's gone. Mitt's not coming back, and we'll see who will be out there come down the pike in a few years. But there's a big deal, and this really does affect us here in Muskegon County, and the those of us who remember the Muskegon Summer Celebration, and I remember it fondly. It was an excellent many years that they had, and they, of course, bellied up a couple years ago, tried to come back last year, were unable to do so, in a new group. Looks like they're on the right track. They've announced their first group, which is going to be Leanne Rimes and somebody else. It'll be a country night, though, and it's a big night. I believe it is on the 4th of July night.
Josh Turner.
And one thing, someone who's attended almost every one of these concerts for almost 20 years now, that country pulls them in, and that's a good start, because the country fans, not only are there many country fans out in West Michigan,
they actually pay their bills.
They pay their bills. Well, they more than pay their bills, because they like to drink beer, and they buy it there. They like to buy elephant ears and hot dogs and other foods and T-shirts and CDs and things like that.
The great thing about country also these days is that with Taylor Swift and the other younger...
there's crossovers.
There's a very big crossover right now. It kind of reminds me of the 70s in a little bit.
Huge.
Yeah, and I think Leanne Rimes actually does... appeal to the crossovers as well.
Well, the crossovers and the alcoholics and the druggies too. So, we're going to bring a rich cultural stew of country music lovers.
You are exceptional today.
Yeah. There's I read the comments when they announced Leanne Rimes was going to be the headliner, and I was unaware that she'd had some other problems.
Yeah,
but
she had a few problems.
Yeah. But I think that's...
she was only 14 years old when she sang Blue.
Yeah, that's true.
For heaven's sakes, I mean, that was an astonishing song.
Well, and it's clear that she doesn't have an imaginary boyfriend, so she's way ahead of some of the other folks that we revere today.
Like Mandy
much.
Teo.
And, of course, Ed McMahon found her, too, and starting the Star... What was the name of that show?
Star Search?
Star Search,
Is that the truth?
Yeah. I think she started on that, didn't she?
I don't know.
Maybe not.
It could be. Well, it could be. Ed was around back when she was 14. Well, anyway, so I great news. It sounds to me like these folks are on the right track, but there's been a fair amount of controversy about the title. We used to be known as Muskegon Summer Celebration. This group is going to be called the Coast West.
Coast West.
Now, is it Coast West Music Festival?
Yes.
Coast West Music Festival. And a lot of folks are wondering about that Coast West. What does it mean? We all know what West Coast is. It's California, Oregon, maybe Washington State if you've got a map in front of you. The average, I'm sure, high school graduate wouldn't include Washington because they think it's south of Canada someplace, but on the east side of the country. But Coast West is being discussed, and I will say that I'm not horribly against it, but I do know that if you look at the biggest festivals that I'm aware of, at the top of my head, you've got the Indy 500, you've got the Milwaukee Summerfest, you've got the Taste of Chicago, you've got any number of, the Boston Marathon. Branding, I know, is maybe something that somebody my age is not, I'm not hip at. But branding, especially when you've got a concert series that's got a history, and people who've been to the Muskegon Summer Celebration, like it or not, at least know where it was. And it's not an easy place to find, by the way, if you've never been here before. But branding with the name seems to me to be important. But there seem to be a lot of the cultural elites here in Muskegon County that just do not like the word Muskegon. We changed our Muskegon museums to Lake Shore, and there's a lot of us that, and I wouldn't include myself, I would not include myself, but there seem to be a fair number of the power, the intellectuals, the folks.
I certainly would exclude you from that.
Absolutely. The culturally sensitive that somehow find the term Muskegon offensive. Now,
well, Muskegon's got a bad name, though.
Well, it may be, and maybe that's the reason. And rather than change Muskegon, they just change the name, and
Yeah, but ultimately, if you're talking about that, what you really want to do is rehabilitate the name Muskegon.
Well, by changing it into something else.
No, I mean, if you really want to do something, then what you need to do is you need to clean up your act, so that Muskegon means something other than what it means right now.
Well, that would be my thought, but the reality is that doesn't seem to be in the cards, because now we've decided to call this the Coast West. Well, I looked up other cities that had decided that rather than clean up their act, they would change their name. And here's something that kind of caught me. Of course, everybody here should know that the Marne, Michigan used to be Berlin, Michigan. And, of course, they changed their name during the war. Sort of made sense. I mean, probably a lot of Adolfs changed their name to Addie.
They didn't want to be bombed.
And they didn't want to get bombed, especially today. But there's some other ones now. Cross Keys, Pennsylvania.
Fred.
Well, that's right. With those wild Navy guys out there. But Cross Keys, Pennsylvania. What a boring name. So they decided to change their name to Intercourse, Pennsylvania.
Oh, there you go.
Dearborn, Illinois, which probably, fearing what has happened to the Dearborn in Michigan, said, let's cut this thing off early. They changed their name to Chicago, Illinois. Earpville, Texas. Now, I don't know. Apparently, Wyatt Earp was a big guy, but Earpville just didn't roll off the lips. Apparently,
it's like the way excuse me,
the city fathers, they changed it to Longview, Texas. I love this one, and this didn't happen that long ago. Can you imagine if you were an upscale community, but the name of your community was East Detroit? I mean, come on. And there is an East Detroit, or was an East Detroit just south, I believe, of, or perhaps east of Detroit.
What are you putting in your coffee this morning?
Some place that was not Detroit. Anyway, they changed their name from East Detroit to East Point in a hope that folks would view them better. St. Paul, Minnesota used to be called Pig's Eye. So folks have made some serious changes.
Now, seriously, Pig's Eye. Now that one does roll off the tongue.
Yes, it does. Yeah, but for whatever reason, the cultural elites didn't like it. My suggestion for Muskegon to change their name: how about Grand Haven, but Grand with an E, so it looks French, so that we could take a really nice sounding town, and we could be Grandy Haven.
Or we can pronounce it Muskegon.
Well, we
I like that.
We could Frenchify. Frenchify. But instead, we're just going to change the name to Coast West, and who knows? We might have people leaving Muskegon, going out to California in search of a summer rock concert, music festival.
Could be.
And
it is 61 in here, by the way. Just wanted to let you know, it's toasting up here.
It's wonderful. Well, everything. We're raising the temperature in Muskegon County. News Talk 1090. We'll be back with Jack McHugh from the Mackinac Center.
And Captain Jack.
Captain Jack, yeah. They'll paint red mustaches on us.
Oh, don't you love me sometime?
Wow, this place is so adorable. I can't believe we haven't stopped in sooner.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Betsy, look at these sweaters. 2 for $75, and they look amazing on our girls.
Maybe they would. I'm not sure if it's the right size.
Oh, come on. You know they're perfect. What's wrong?
Suzanne, I have no business being in the store. I should not be shopping. Things are really tight right now.
Tight? Are you and Michael having trouble?
We're behind on our mortgage, and Michael is really worried.
Listen, Bill and I had the same problem a few months ago, and we got some really great counseling, and it was free. I'm going to email you the information as soon as we get home.
Suzanne, you're the best.
If you even think you may be in danger of foreclosure, call the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. Certified housing counselors can help you work through your problems, and the service is free. Call the NFCC at 866-687-6322 or visit mortgagehelpnow.org. That's mortgagehelpnow.org. This has been a public service from the NFCC.
The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090, WKBC Muskegon, and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
The truth about too good to be true car insurance is that it is. That's why Esurance created the Coverage Counselor tool. It helps you choose the right coverage for you at a great price. Esurance. Insurance for the modern world. Now backed by Allstate. Click or call.
Coverage Counselor highlights options to consider in choosing coverage. Not available in all states.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
I knew I was stuck at this kid's house for the night, but those guys snuck up on me to try and pull the hand in a bowl of warm water trick. Well, that was enough for me. I went downstairs to sleep in the basement, even though it was pitch black. I left my sleeping bag upstairs, and that was a mistake, because it was freezing. I think it was probably the longest night of my life. To read more about the sleepover, check out Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Last Straw by Jeff Kinney. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library, and visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. Variably cloudy skies with snow showers likely today with a high around 20, northwest winds 20 to 30 miles an hour. We do have a lake effect snow warning in effect from 7 p.m. until 5 p.m. tomorrow. It looks like occasional snow showers tonight. 2 to 4 inches of accumulation, a low around 15, northwest winds 15 to 25. And then for tomorrow, blustery with snow showers, another 2 to 4 inches expected with some blowing and drifting snow, a high of 16. News Talk 1090, the Talk of Muskegon.
What's a lever action? What's a pump? What's an automatic? What's a bolt action? Hi, folks. I'm Tom Gresham, and I invite you to join me as we answer these and other questions on Gun Talk. Gun Talk is the only show out there about gun rights, collecting, personal defense, sport, and recreational shooting. And of course, we never forget about safety on Gun Talk.
It's Gun Talk, Sunday afternoons at 3 on News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon. 1090 WKBZ.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
The dadgum government, and we are back at EyeOnMuskegon. We've got Captain Fred, we've got Captain Oscar, and we've got Captain Jack McHugh from the Mackinac Center with us today. We're all captains today.
Captain Morgan in our coffee.
And we ought to have Captain Morgan in the coffee, but we don't. But who knows? The show still has some time to go. Certainly the music has plenty of time to go, and it gets louder.
Off any time, Oscar.
Yeah, can we maybe even slow her down just a little bit? Well, it's a good thing that our theme song isn't Inagata Davida.
Did I ever tell you about I probably better not on the air.
Well,
I'll tell you after we're off the air.
Okay,
a story about that.
What people...
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Army Specialist Andrew Pike became paralyzed while serving in Iraq. Andrew and his father explained the impact of his injury.
At first, you think, I want my son to be able to walk.
My injury was a gunshot wound to the left abdomen from a sniper. My first contact with paralyzed veterans was in Walter Reed.
Paralyzed Veterans National Service officers work with our injured veterans to ensure they get the benefits they have earned. NSO Michael Killen explains.
We try to reassure them what benefits are out there, and we try to educate them and take some of that stress away from them.
Paralyzed Veterans of America helped Andy get the auto, housing, and vocational benefits he earned.
PVA did a fantastic job making sure that he got those benefits on a timely basis.
Right now I'm going back to school to earn a degree, and I'm just spending time with my wife and child.
To learn how you can help our paralyzed veterans, visit pva.org. A public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
Cold steel, rough concrete, tough plastic, synthetics. Today's world is enough to make us lose our real sense of touch and feel hundreds of miles away from nature. Luckily, that's not the case. There are places all around where you can get in touch with nature. At the National Wildlife Refuges. Here you can experience the warm, inviting touch of nature at every turn. Feel the smooth, gentle bark of a white birch tree on your fingertips. Walk barefoot on the smooth, water-worn river stones. Feel the soft moss lining a towering wall of limestone. When you feel these things, you're feeling the world the way we found it. With over 500 refuges across America, you don't have to go far to make a special connection with nature. Learn more at fws.gov/refuges. That's fws.gov/refuges.
I shoved the envelope under my sweater and sneaked through the kitchen. Mom was on the phone in the front room. I didn't want to have to explain anything. I just wanted to be by myself. Clutching the envelope tightly, I stepped onto the ladder at the bottom of the treehouse. Something caught my eye above me, and I looked up. Light! It looked as if there were a firework display going on inside the treehouse. Crackling and snapping and whizzing sounds spun around above my head. Light shot out in sparks, dancing to the popping of noise. My first thought was to scream fire and run to the house to get Mom. My legs trembled as I inched upward, creeping up the rungs as quietly as I could. My heart banged so hard that it felt as if someone were hitting my chest. A couple more steps, and then I leaned forward, craning my neck to look inside. And then I looked up and saw... To find out what happens next, read Philippa Fisher's Fairy Godsister by Liz Kessler. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library. And visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
Okay, honey, go play. My son needed a medical imaging exam, but talk of radiation made me a little concerned. So I asked our doctor, how will this exam improve his care? Are there alternative tests that don't use radiation? Is the facility accredited for quality and safety? And will he receive a child-sized radiation dose? Our doctor told me, if you need a scan, the benefits outweigh any risk.
If you're concerned about radiation, ask your doctor and get the facts at imagegently.org.
My goodness, we got all kinds of things going on in the studio today. Anyway,
Well, I think perhaps we lost Jack, so we're going to try again with Jack.
But what we need to do is we need to be able to look at what the cost is versus what the benefits are to the community in order to decide whether or not we want to spend that kind of money, the $31 million that we're talking about that is for the bond issue for Muskegon Community College. And so what are the benefits that are going to accrue from that expenditure of public funds? And the issue is why are people going to school? They're going to school in order to get some kind of skills or knowledge so that they can actually use that in a job in the future. And in this particular case, they've wrapped most of this bond issue up for the fine arts program, as I understand it. And, so when you start to look at the cost-benefit analysis, does it really make any sense? I mean, are people actually going to be making a good, healthy living doing things? I don't know. There are skills that they do provide, graphic arts, typography, those types of things. On the other hand, we can only have so many potters in the Muskegon area. Artists.
Let me maybe take what folks would perhaps expect coming from me, but maybe a little more aggressive position, and that is that we are at a position in Muskegon County. We are at a situation at MCC even. We are certainly in a situation in the state of Michigan and the United States of America where we are spending more money than we're bringing in. And certainly MCC is a wonderful local school here, but it is a recipient of millions and millions and millions of dollars coming from the state and from the Fed. And okay, well, okay, all right. Well, hold on here. Okay, I can keep talking now. Okay, and here's the problem. So in other words, MCC doesn't generate enough cash to operate in the way that a normal business would be. No universities, no colleges do. The question is now a prudent time, a time when everyone agrees. I mean, even those who are on the far left and think that we ought to be borrowing more and more and more, they all agree that there is going to be a problem at some point in copying or paying back the debt that we currently have. Is this a good time to expand on it? I have no problem with the fact that these folks will attempt to go out and borrow $31 million. I really would like to see the rationale behind it. And as you said, Fred, okay, we're going to spend $31 million. What are we going to get for it?
Yeah, what's the benefit?
And after our little bit of a problem here, I think we do have Jack McHugh. Jack, you on the phone?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry about that. It's a little cold here. We got some problems with the board. But Jack McHugh is a policy expert on all number of things with the Mackinac Center, and you're based in Lansing, Michigan here. But Jack, we're talking to you because you had a very good article it had been published in a variety of areas, but it was just talking about the education bubble, and I'll let you take it from there.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, actually, it wasn't my article. I blogged about it, so I was glomming on it.
Glomming is good. We do that here often.
I was the glommer. In the American Interest online publication, the article is called "The End of the University as We Know It," and there's two things going on here. One is that the university customers, parents and families and students, are looking at the price and what they get for the money of higher education these days, and they're kind of looking at these university administrators funny and asking them, wait a minute, you want to charge me how much for what? For a degree that will do what?
Well, Jack, they don't seem to have been asking that much lately because universities seem to be, packed with the students who are comfortably borrowing tens of thousands of dollars.
Apparently, that is starting to fall off. We had a report from Moody's Investor Services in the last week, which showed that actually during the Great Recession, the last few years, you did have pretty good attendance levels. A lot of people were, or at least applying and getting accepted, and but it is starting to fall off now. More recently, a number the report it was a survey, and an increasing number of universities are declining in enrollments, and are importantly what the article was about was, or the study was about, was that universities are starting to lose their pricing power. Where for years, they could just keep jacking up tuitions, charging more and more, and people would still come. And they've pretty much appear, according to this report, looks like they're starting to reach the end of that road.
And of course, this is at the end of a big expansion. I know that many of the universities, certainly my alma mater, Michigan State University, just completed or is close to completion a multi hundreds of millions dollar fundraising effort. So the universities have been very successful within the last decade at raising money, and I'm assuming, well, I can assure you from the Michigan State side, and I'm sure others, significant expansions with that money.
Yeah, you've got different tiers of universities have different capabilities in that regard. The top tier academically, those that have big football programs like MSU and are just much larger, have a much larger alumni base, they're in better shape as far as that kind of private sector fundraising.
Which are the ones that seem to be in the most trouble?
Well, that'd be the Central Michigan, Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Ferris State, Northern Michigan, basically all these mid-tier universities, state universities, and private universities also, because what's starting to happen now is these innovative online programs are coming from some of the big boys in the field. Harvard and Princeton are putting some of their big classes online for free. And okay, that's nice that you can watch a high level professor deliver lectures, but can you get a marketable degree from it? That's been the question. People, marketable in the sense of something you walk into an employer and say, hey, look, I know the stuff. You should hire me.
Well, Jack,
the answer has been no, but apparently that is starting to change.
One of the things that I've spoken with employers, and especially high-level employers, and they tell me, because we have all kind of agreed that the young folks who are graduating from Princeton and Harvard and Cornell and some of what would be considered the elite universities, and I would also include University of Michigan and Michigan State and some of the other maybe not elite, but the top universities. But even at the elite level, the education that is received by the students in their 4, 5, 6 years at these universities isn't necessarily very impressive. And I have said this for years, and I'm sad to say that, but in my 4 years at Michigan State, I don't think I learned anything that I hadn't already learned in high school. And now, of course, certainly some of the very rigorous degree programs, the science and the math and maybe languages and all are different. But generally speaking, these students don't come out any more brilliant. In some cases, they come out even less brilliant. But what the employers tell me they like is the fact that these young people have been vetted. You're not allowed to give IQ tests anymore. As a matter of fact, hiring, you're likely to get sued for any number of violations of various civil rights acts and laws and rules and regulations. But an employer knows that if someone was able to get accepted to Michigan State or Michigan or Harvard in particular, Yale, Cornell, that in fact those students had spectacular grades and also probably family support and other support that allowed them to really become the elite. And so employers are using these colleges not so much as a way to educate their future employees, but as a way to make their employment picks easier. How's online going to change that?
Yeah, well, that's been going on for decades, really. As you say, they can't give IQ tests, and it's not just IQ. There's a whole group of skills that having stuck it out for 4 years of college, gone to the classes, taken the test, passed them, jumped through all the bureaucratic hoops, etc. That demonstrates that a person has the ability to, show up, among other things, and look ahead at least a little bit and accomplish these tasks. So, having a degree has been a proxy for employers for a group of skills. But there's, on the other side, we just Richard Vedder is a college professor down in Ohio who's researched higher education for years. He's got a study coming out shortly in which he shows that nearly half of four-year college students today or college graduates are working in jobs that according to the U.S. Labor Department, don't require a college degree.
Now,
for example, there's over 1 million retail salespersons and 115,000 janitors and cleaners in the country who are college graduates. So on the demand side, you've got students and parents who are looking at what colleges are charging for these degrees, looking at what that will get them in the workplace, and responding, you got to be nuts to think that I'm going to pay that kind of money for this kind of degree. We're not talking here, we should be clear about highly technical degrees, but the liberal arts sort of thing that are still
underwater
very
basket
common.
weaving. Hey, Jack, this is Fred Birch. Hey, one of the things that you said initially, you were talking about the customers of the universities, and then Jim started to bring up the employer side of this, and I would at least throw out that one of the customers of universities are the employers themselves. And there is not a concerted effort by the universities, at least at the four-year university level, I don't believe, that takes into account the wants, needs, desires of those employers. There's a lot of talking about it. There may be some efforts to do the recruiting drives and all of those things, but there is no tying the skills, knowledge, abilities, those types of things, the experience, to the actual needs of the employers. In other words, I can take a class, and let's just say it's in accounting, and there is no tying that to the actual practices of a business, so that the employer can see a significant tie-in to what it is that they actually need in the way of skills that the person coming out of college does. And so I would argue that in addition to this bubble or this level of frustration by the parents and the students, there's a frustration at the employer level as well, which is causing this disconnect. And employers in many cases are, if they're not going for the top tier kinds of students, then what they're doing is they're growing their own employees within the organization and bypassing those college graduates that are coming out. As someone with a kid that did graduate from Grand Valley State, who is still working in a factory level job on the line, it's very frustrating to me to be watching this when he ought to be out building a career. He's having difficulty finding even a step into a door. The doors just aren't open for him.
Well, there's a lot of things going on here. As Jim pointed out, having stuck it out for 4 years of college does send an important signal to a potential employer. Fred, I think in an area you happen to mention accounting. That's probably an area where the skill sets that are being taught are more closely aligned with what an employer needs.
No, hold on, Jack. Just as a point of clarification, you said county. Do you mean like at a community college?
No, he means accounting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard you say county. Okay.
But maybe
accountability, absolutely.
No, and maybe
but I read recently about an employer who gives. This is more in line with what you're saying, Fred. That employer, he gives job applicants, college graduates, a writing test. Nothing real complicated. He just wants to see if they can assemble sentences and paragraphs that make sense, that have some logical progression. And he finds that a very large proportion of those he gives this test to cannot do that basic skill, even after 4 years of university. And he's using this test as a proxy for clear thinking more than anything else. So you've got one of the challenges that has arisen is there's been this big push over the decades to democratize college, to make it less of an elitist kind of thing, get a college for everyone. And in the process, we've definitely seen curriculums get dumbed down, and we've seen students advanced through the university, who, frankly, are not the top tier academic students. And the other thing that we've seen that Jim, you referred to a little bit earlier, was huge numbers of students who do not finish college, who they spend a lot of money, take some classes, and they don't get a degree.
Jack,
which doesn't do anybody any good, except for the university that's collecting the fees and the tuition.
Exactly. Hey, Jack, we got to take a break here, and we apologize for the little problems that we had to begin with. Can you hang over after the break and come on back with us?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. We'll be back. We're talking about this bubble coming up, a big one, at EyeOnMuskegon.
As long as I live.
It was a moment.
It was a moment that changed my life.
We looked down from the chopper and saw the whole area was flooded.
At that moment, it really hit me. This is why I joined the Guard.
People had gone up to the rooftops to escape the rising waters.
Talk about intense moments. We had to lower the guys on line some 30 feet down.
This is where teamwork and training really paid off.
It took steady nerves and steady hands for the chopper pilots to hover like that.
No question, Guard pilots are the best in the world.
I couldn't believe it. I just saved a life.
What could be better than serving the people of my hometown?
In the National Guard, you serve your community as well as your country while you work or attend college. In return, you gain skills in which you can build a career and receive benefits that can help you pay for college. Learn more about what it means to be a citizen soldier at NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the Michigan National Guard, aired by the Michigan Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Because Susan switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on car insurance, her retirement account wants to bake her a chocolate cake. But it can't. It's a retirement account. It doesn't have the upper body strength to lift a cake pan into an oven. Switch to Geico, and every time you see the savings, you'll know your retirement account wants to bake you a chocolate cake. But remember, it can't. It's a retirement account. It is, however, happy that you're saving money.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
I wanted to be in the military since I was a kid.
I served a total of 16 years.
And at 19 years old, that's the first time I ever saw somebody die.
Coming back, I was raging.
I started having pretty horrible nightmares.
I started drinking a lot.
I guess I never recognized it in myself.
It all starts with going to the VA. There's a whole community of veterans that just want to help you out.
It's for the guys who couldn't come back, so you owe it to them to live well, because they're not here with their families.
Visit MakeTheConnection.net.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station at downtown Spring Lake.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket.
This is Eye on Muskegon, and we are back online and on the air, we hope, with Jack McHugh. Jack, are you there? Well, hope is nice, but hope
should be here.
Jack, are you there?
Hope is not a strategy.
But hope is most definitely not a strategy, and nor is it a strategery.
He's here. Jack is here.
Well, he isn't.
I guess he should be here. Jack, are you here?
I'm here.
He's here.
Okay. Maybe Jack.
He was hiding.
Maybe Jack goes out there
He
with
went
that
to the
Captain
bathroom
Jack
and
this
warmed
morning.
up a little bit.
Hey, Jack, what I'd like to do is to clarify here a little bit, because we are talking about this education bubble and the essential crux of the college bubble story. And I'll just read from his article. It says, the most important part of the college bubble story, and the one we will soon be hearing much more about, concerns the impending financial collapse of numerous private colleges and universities and the likely shrinkage of many of the public ones. Now, I think we sort of addressed the reasons why they are going to collapse, because businesses are not finding that the college degree is worth going after. In some cases, certainly some of those degrees, and from some of those colleges and universities, and students and parents are finding out that it isn't worth going into debt if in fact you're not going to get something that is of so much more significant value than actually working and getting job experience, that you'll be able to get a job and pay it all back. And unfortunately, that's what's happening. So if we have this bubble, and I would agree, it seems to me with all these expansions, I mean, I know the one that's going on right now is in the law schools nationally, where actually law students are graduating and suing their law school because the law school had, as it turns out, fudged the numbers on the number of jobs that lawyers received, job offers that lawyers received after graduation. As a matter of fact, in one case where the lawyers, the student lawyers or the recently graduated lawyers did sue, apparently the law school was including any job that any lawyer got, including maybe working as a janitor, or working in a factory, or working in a McDonald's, as a job that was a law school job, law graduate's job. So we've got this bubble, which is going to, if in fact does hit, these universities and these colleges, both public and private, have got a lot of borrowed money out there. Well, what's the result to the rest of us? What happens if this bubble does burst, which I can't see how it cannot, because people more and more are finding out I can't afford it and it's not worth it.
Well, taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for those unfunded liabilities at universities. The government should pay for them.
Oh,
wait a minute, there's a disconnect there.
Yes, there is.
Well, that's a good question, Jim. And there's one other piece of the puzzle that should be mentioned here, which is that the colleges offer two things to students. One is knowledge. The other is a marketable certificate that you have the knowledge and that you're capable of learning more. And that has been the marketable certificate, the degree. Frankly, that's what probably the majority of students go to get, because they think that's their ticket to a
good job, good high-paying
job. Middle class economic security and standard of living. Well, until recently, you couldn't get that certificate any other way except jumping through the hoops, spending the time actually learning the stuff. And that's what's starting to change. In this article in American Interest, it reports that MIT is now offering a certificate of having taken the course, passed the test, taken the course online for free, completed tests that show you actually learned the stuff, for which there is a small fee to actually take the test and do that. Just watching the class is free. And that's been, as I say, that's been the thing that has been missing from the online, which is really just in its very first, first early spring growth.
What do you mean by what's been missing?
Higher education.
Do you mean
when this expands, that students can actually get certificates that I know the stuff, Mr. Employer. Not only did I didn't just go and sit in classes for 4 years. I really know the stuff. And here's the certificate from the maybe a third-party test-giving organization that has proctored exams. There's no monkey business of someone else taking it, etc. Employers are going to be impressed by that, especially if they need a particular skill set that the test represents.
Well, I'll read another sentence from this article, which really seems to me to be exciting. It says, when the bubble bursts, we will see the birth of something entirely new as we accept one central and unavoidable fact. The college classroom is about to go virtual. Now, for people my age, and pretty much the age of everybody in our studio and maybe the gentleman on the phone, that might be a little hard to imagine because we learned with interaction.
We're analog men in a digital world.
Correct. But the young people now are growing up with an entirely different way of learning or sadly not learning at all. But they are used to reading online. They are used to getting information online. And again, we're not 99% of our American high school graduation population should not expect, nor would it make any sense for them to go to college. But for those folks who are interested in higher education, in actually learning something additional from high school, beyond high school, it seems to me to make an awful lot of sense. And one thing that's really bothered me is this move throughout this country that everyone ought to go to college, whether you've earned your way through, not financially, forget the financial side of it because the government will pick up that, but without having earned their way through high school. It used to be that if in fact you didn't graduate high school or you had horrible grades and in fact you graduated but you couldn't get into college, you would then go to maybe adult education classes. You might go to community college to take those classes that would allow you to move up. But even today, I read an article not too long ago about Michigan State University that in its freshman class had over 30 classes full. I don't know how large the classes were. 30 classes full for English, remedial English for students where English was their first language. It wasn't like Spanish students or students from another country, but in fact, a relatively well-respected university, Michigan State University, had 30 classes filled with freshmen who needed remedial English. Now think about that. They were accepted to this university, and they didn't have the basic English skills to get in.
Mackinac Center did a study some time ago, more than 10 years ago, in which we found that universities in the states spend $600 million a year on remedial education, and we weren't looking at second language, which that's understandable.
Absolutely, yeah. This is basic stuff that Americans ought to know.
Yeah, we're looking at poor performance by K through 12 schools, and frankly the families, who aren't cracking the whip on those kids in many cases. But and as I say, that was some go. I don't think the situation has gotten better. We have increasing reports from employers. A lot of it is anecdotal, but articles in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere that they cannot. They're having a hard time finding employees who show up on time and have basic, work habits, and who frankly can pass the drug test.
Yeah, exactly.
So, there's a lot of challenges involved here, but here's the crunch. You asked who's going to have to pay for this. Well, first of all, what are they going to have to pay for? Let's just recap a little bit. We've got an online learning education and higher education, which is just beginning. We're just seeing the first green shoots. We're starting to see this, the ability of students to get marketable credentials, a certificate that says, I know the stuff, Mr. Employer, at a fraction of the cost of what getting a 4-year degree or even a 2-year degree would cost. And at the same time, we've seen universities, public and private universities, essentially pricing themselves beyond the reach of middle-class families in this country, and to a large, and we've got, these hundreds of thousands of students, millions of students graduating with these huge debt loads. Well, you combine all that, and you start to see, wait a minute, if students can get the knowledge, can get their credentials, and don't have to rack up these huge debts and these huge bills for employers to be able to see that, yeah, you know the stuff, I'll hire you, then what's going to happen to these huge institutions with all this debt, all these unfunded employee liabilities, pension, etc., if their customers walk away?
Well, what will happen?
And,
what do you think?
And apparently we're starting to see, according to Moody's study, we're starting to see that. And by the way, Jim, you mentioned the law schools.
Wait, hold on. We just got a question. You said we're starting to see that. What is it that we're starting to see?
We're starting to see the. I'll try and dig up the statistic while we're online here from the Moody's. But we're seeing enrollments not rising or actually declining, and universities when they traditionally they raised tuition, the students came anyway, and according to this Moody's Investor Services report, that's starting to change. They raise the prices, and the students say, "Oh, wait, sorry, I'm going to look elsewhere."
Okay, so that's starting to change because at some point you are going to find that price elasticity does kick in.
Yeah, and Jack, the other thing that you were talking about, and you were saying that you've got the courses and all of these different kinds of things, but it looks to me like an awful lot of what is resident at those big universities is overhead, buildings, and research scientists and research areas and all kinds of overhead that doesn't exist in the online world. And what it sounds like to me is that what you're really doing is you're describing a huge business opportunity or a business model where somebody could go in and start testing organizations that not only test on the knowledge, skills, and abilities of students that have taken online courses, but students or people that already have resident skills that they already have, maybe coming out of high school or from experience or something of that nature. And if you built up some credibility, you would totally change the entire university model and probably collapse the entire thing.
Companies like Sylvan are already in that business, and there are many others. As a matter of fact, it really saddens me to see advertisements, very compelling advertisements by some of these companies like Sylvan, or saying, hey, if your child can't learn to do arithmetic or isn't good writing, send them to Sylvan or whatever, and in fact we'll teach them. Because these companies have learned the skills to teach the skills to the children, and in fact our educational billions and billions of dollars that we spend here on secondary education and primary education doesn't seem to be letting these kids graduate with a lot of these skills. One thing I'd like to make mention too, you can learn the information, and this is the revolution that's coming. You can learn organic chemistry, for instance, online at MIT, for instance, or perhaps Harvard, or maybe Michigan State, or even MCC. But then the question is, well, geez, I can get my friend to take the exam. But if you have them, as you said, Jack, if you take the exam out of Sylvan or a place where it is proctored, where in fact you have to produce the documentation that you know that you are who you say you are, and then take the exam, all of a sudden you can do, without this big expensive building in the Ivy and all the other things that are involved and all these administrators, you can take an exam and get that certification. I love that.
Well, and it's not as if this is a new model.
No, it isn't.
We've had the bar system for the legal profession for years and years and years. You don't have to go to law school to take the bar exam, and you've got the board system for the medical fraternity. I call them fraternity for a reason, but they've got the board system in order to make sure that you're board certified.
Fred, you mentioned the accountants earlier. The certified public accountant has been the classic example of that model in operation, where, how to become a CPA. You have to pass a test that shows you actually know the stuff. But Jim, I mentioned some of these trends and some of the recent studies and statistics. Here's what Moody's found, that for the school year, the fiscal year that ends this June, they did a survey. 18% of 165 private universities and 15% of 127 public universities project a decline in net tuition revenue, which is up sharply from 10% and just 4% in just a year ago. So the pressures are growing, and you also mentioned about the lawyers and the kids going to law school. The statistics are screaming out to anyone any young person thinking about law school, don't do it. And here are those statistics. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, federal level, estimates that the economy will provide 21,880 new jobs for lawyers annually through 2020. Law schools have, since 2010, law schools have produced more than 44,000 graduates every year.
More than double.
So you've got more than, you got twice as many law school graduates coming out of school every year as there are jobs for it.
One would think that a smart lawyer would have a very successful class action malpractice lawsuit against the law schools for bringing these young folks into a world that cannot hire them.
A young employee at the Mackinac, a very bright young woman who graduated from journalism degree just several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and I was shocked to hear that her department, the journalism department, only toward the very end of her career in college, that they start warning, oh, by the way, there's a little problem in the journalism field. The newspapers are collapsing and there's no jobs out there. Because their economic model is no longer, in an online world, it no longer works.
Well, that's the real problem there is that these young folks and their parents are not being told early enough. Jack, we've got to take a break here. Thank you so much for being on and hanging through with our little rough times trying to get the electronics working. And thanks for the wonderful job you folks at the Mackinac Center do. So we'll have you back at some point. We're looking forward to it, and we're going to take a break right now. We will be back.
Thanks, Jim. Take care. Bye-bye.
I love cocktail party trivia like this. From 1939 to 1942, there was an undersea post office in the Bahamas. Fortunately, Radio Juniper always has a smart and interesting guest to help offset my lack of knowledge about things that actually matter. Tune in to Radio Juniper every Wednesday morning at 9 on News Talk 1090 WKBZ to learn some important stuff and some not so important stuff. Guess which ingredient I'm adding to the soup?
You're smart enough to know when a deal seems too good to be true, like a no-sweat workout plan or a $5 prime rib buffet. But when you're shopping for car insurance, it's surprisingly easy to get duped into crummy coverage. That's why Esurance created the Coverage Counselor, an online tool to help you choose the right coverage for you at a great price. Too good to be true? Nope. Just insurance for the modern world. Esurance, now backed by Allstate. Click or call.
Coverage Counselor highlights options to consider in choosing coverage. Not available in all states.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
Fox News Radio, I'm Karen McHugh. While the public swearing-in ceremony will take place tomorrow, the law says the president and vice president must take the oath of office on January 20th. So, Vice President Joe Biden was sworn in for a second time this morning, humbly thanking his supporters.
I thank you very, very, very much for sharing this morning with Jill and me. And Madam Justice, it's been an honor, a great honor. Thank you.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor administered the oath of office, the first time a Latin American official has done So, Algerian authorities say at least 23 hostages were killed in an assault on a Sahara gas complex that had been taken over by terrorists. Several Britons among the dead. Prime Minister David Cameron saying he'll use his position as head of the G8 to call for a firm response.
And it requires a response that is patient, that is painstaking, that is tough, but also intelligent.
32 terrorists were killed in that assault. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. Variably cloudy skies with snow showers likely today with a high around 20, northwest winds 20 to 30 miles an hour. We do have a lake effect snow warning in effect from 7 p.m. until 5 p.m. tomorrow. It looks like occasional snow showers tonight. 2 to 4 inches of accumulation, a low around 15, northwest winds 15 to 25. And then for tomorrow, blustery with snow showers, another 2 to 4 inches expected with some blowing and drifting snow, a high of 16. News Talk 1090, the talk of Muskegon.
Radio host skills to everybody here in the room, and we don't even need to do it online. Yeah. We get a chance to do it right up front.
Do you think I could take a test on that?
I would think you could pass it. Clearly, you're almost so good that there may be a fan uprising to replace me with Captain Fred. But until that happens, I'm here. Your lovable little host here with Oscar and Fred. But I'd like to read one little thing because we have big education. We talk about big oil and all these evil corporations and all this kind of stuff. But we have at some point have to get a little skeptical. I mean, and not necessarily in a negative sense, but we've got to start asking questions about those who pretend, or at least who tell us, that they are purely for our benefit. They have clean, clear hearts. They're not selfish in any way like those nasty corporations out there, like the horrible Walmart or that gas station or that drugstore that's open 24/7. And I'm going to just read this because there's some discussion about imposing Sarbanes-Oxley rules, which are rules that control companies and try to keep companies from cheating you. And here's what it says. It says, it has traditionally been assumed that universities, as ostensibly charitable organizations, would be run with an eye on the public good. Thus, formal restraints on self-dealing, conflicts of interest, and rules that apply to private corporations would not be necessary because they have such pure hearts. Today, however, universities are big businesses riven with self-interest, and there is little evidence that charitable purpose plays any role in their behavior. The entire nonprofit sector, not just higher ed, is ripe for much more scrutiny. There's lots of money sloshing around and not much accountability. And Fred, you had alluded to earlier all the trappings that come along with the university, the buildings and everything else. But the administrators, and I'm reading more and more and more of universities where someone's done a study and they found out that they have more administrators than they in fact have instructors. And University of Texas, I believe, was one of the more recent ones. So these aren't just the odd Christian school someplace in North Dakota, but in fact these are big public universities that are really laden with fat and layers of employees and vice presidents and senior vice presidents and vice chiefs of student go-go.
You have a way with words of painting a very interesting picture, but these are not things that are unknown in this world. I mean, Weber back in the day when he was describing bureaucracies, 100 years ago, was talking about the fact that the first rule of bureaucracies is to protect the bureaucracy and to grow the bureaucracy, and they are nothing but bureaucracies. And what it takes is that level of skepticism, and I might even add cynicism to some degree, of the watchdogs, the citizens, to start to look at these programs and start to pare them down. Because after all, they are highly funded by taxpayers' money when it comes to state institutions, and we have some of the finest state institutions around. But again, why is it that we have this overhead at these large universities, whether it's the instructors that aren't instructing, their student aides or their associate professors are doing the instructing while the professors are off doing their research or writing their books or doing other things of academia.
Well, the answer to that is simple, and it just goes to the last sentence of what I just read. It says there's lots of money sloshing around and not much accountability.
Yeah.
And I would, it's interesting, as we're sitting here talking about higher education and the bubble, and this bubble, when this bubble bursts, is going to be an expensive bubble. It's not just that people are going to decide, for instance, I'm not going to go to Walmart anymore. Well, if Walmart disappears, yes, people will be laid off, but in fact, Walmart doesn't owe money to taxpayers. But there's going to be a problem that the rest of us are going to have to pick up if, in fact, this university, the old brick and mortar, sort of the Best Buy compared to Amazon. But let me here's to me is the key. Right now, the federal government is looking at promulgating monstrous new rules to protect people who get mortgages for their homes, so that they don't get expensive, these types of mortgages that jump up in fees, and to make sure that the people can in fact afford to pay these mortgages back. Now, we can argue, and I would be skeptical as to how effective these are going to be in terms of protecting the mortgage requester, but at least that's what the federal government's looking at right now. Why do we not have similar rules requiring that when someone sits down and talks with an admissions officer, that they talk about the complete cost? They talk about the difference in cost between 4 years and 6 years and 9 years.
I've got one thing about that, because I've got 4 kids that went to school. 3 of them went to trade school. They're all working, doing very well right now. I've got one that went back to become an RN. She takes most of her classes online, even though she goes to Muskegon.
So she's already doing it, yeah.
Yeah. And then I've got my youngest daughter who is going to Northern, who's been there going on 5 years now and still doesn't really know what she's going to do, but spent all this money. What is she, why didn't they say, okay, let's figure out what you're going to do first before you continue to spend money on this school? And why didn't she say? But still,
I think it's a great point, and I think the last figure that I saw was approaching $1 trillion. There's $1 trillion of student debt load that is out there.
Think about that, folks. That's just students who at this point don't have jobs, and they owe $1 trillion to the federal government.
Right.
And there are rules that are concerning that student debt. For example, if you are in school, you don't have to pay that debt back. So there's gamesmanship that goes on.
Right.
There are people that continue to go on in school, taking a class or 2 classes in order not to start paying back their debt. And the debt load is increasing at a rapid pace. When the bills become due on that student debt load, you can expect a hue and cry of some kind of a bailout that the taxpayers are going to be expected to fund in order to get these people out of debt.
And you know what's awful about that is that the young people are demanding to be bailed out. Well, it's the old folks that have already spent all of our money. So if in fact they get the bailout, we will take from the poor and give to those who at least had the wherewithal to borrow money to go to college. We'll put that debt back on everybody. So in fact, this will be, you talk about an upside down way of redistributing wealth, which is going to happen to the people and the unborn.
Like cash for clunkers.
Well, it is very much like cash for clunkers. It truly is. Hey, we are running a little bit out of time here. Just hit a couple of items that we missed earlier. Carmen's, I will be at Carmen's this week, Tuesday only, from 2 to about 3:15. And of course, this is a very, very big meeting talking about this prevailing wage issue.
Signing autographs and stuff?
I'm always signing autographs if necessary, but I do buy coffee.
I'll bring a check by.
There we go. Hey, so do look to Carmen's. Add this to your Sunday list of things to do, as I mentioned last week. The Renegade River Show, right after the polka time, starts at noon. And interestingly, I will be on again as a guest. But it's a great show from noon to 1 o'clock here on KBZ every Sunday morning. Don't forget, again, Oscar's going to have the video of us, so you will be able to see us on TV, channel TV 38 or 397.
Little coats.
And there may be some surprises in there during that time.
Yeah, I'm going to watch the show to see what exactly happened. Certainly, if you were listening, you might not know. Hey, thanks, Captain Fred, Oscar, Mackinac Centers, Jack McHugh, all of you wonderful listeners out there. Hey, pass the word on. We're trying to let you know what's going on in this county and in this state and to a certain extent into this country. Next Sunday, we will continue our quest for truth, justice, and the American way. We're going to have a mayoral candidate, Dr. Zaudi Abi Uday. I think I got it correct. He's going to come in. He's going to talk about his interest in running for the mayor of Muskegon and the big stuff happening in Muskegon, city of Muskegon, a town whose name the cultural elite is not fond of and looks down upon. We might talk to him about that also. Anyway, folks, you have a great week in our little piece of heaven. Next week, we'll put the eye on you, Muskegon.
Neon, day glow, flashing lights, special effects. Today's world puts our sense of sight on overload. Luckily, there are places we can go to refocus our senses. Our national wildlife refuges. It's a wonder how much you'll see once all the distractions fade away. You may see a lone eagle soaring past massive snow-capped mountains, or a great horned owl perched stoically on a branch nearby. You may see the furry face of a baby sea otter curiously poking its head out of the dark blue sea, or ancient rocks shaped by centuries of wind. When you see these things, you're seeing the world the way we found it. With over 500 refuges across America, you don't have to go far to make a special connection with nature. Learn more at fws.gov/refuges. That's fws.gov/refuges.
This is WKBZ Muskegon and WOOD HD2 Muskegon.